What's good, YouTube family? Jake Portalese here, back with another, I was about to say follow along workout, but this is actually interesting this time. Today we are doing a book review. I love to share books, especially if it's a book that I feel has changed my life and I feel that can personally change the perspective and outcome of another person's life. So this one specifically, I've been putting off and I really have wanted to read for so long now, and I finally ordered it online. It came in and I read it in like 2 days. It is Man's Search for Meaning. See if it can focus. Can it focus? Oh, all right, you can see it though. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. So I kind of want to do a little overview of this book, give you guys some of my takeaways. There's 2 parts throughout the book. I'll go a little background of who Viktor Frankl is, but personally, this book made me reread so many times. Even though it only took me 2 days to read, I was literally going through and I'm like, I'd read a little paragraph or a sentence and I'd be like, I gotta reread that. That just like blew my mind. Like, wow, like it made me think so much differently. And I was like rereading it, trying to understand. Cause I mean, the way that it is, cause it's forwarded by this guy named Harold Kushner. So he actually writes most of it in here, and I'm reading it and trying to like really articulate it in my own identity. And I think that's what you'll get from this book, is that like when you read it yourself, you'll have your own kind of meaning. So everyone has their own kind of meaning. And this is interesting as we get into the topic of meaning. So let me just jump right into this. So first, it actually says here on the back, one of the great books of our time. Oh, would you look at that? So I loved it, honestly, 10 out of 10. But who is Viktor Frankl? So Viktor Frankl, he was a psychiatrist, and he was actually a prisoner in multiple camps, so 4 camps. So he was a prisoner, and one of them, the main one they talk about in the book, is Auschwitz. So there's 2 parts. The first part being his journey through being a prisoner in Auschwitz. And then the second part goes into more of his theory. So he has something which is known as logotherapy. So logo is a Greek term meaning meaning, right? It has meaning. So logos is meaning, therapy. So his whole thing when he was a psychiatrist was this theory of logotherapy, which is basically there is meaning in everything in life. And that's basically what this book is about. See, it says Man's Search for Meaning. So during the camp, and I'll jump right now into the first part, this is really, really cool. The first part was one of my favorites. Honestly, it is my favorite. But reading through it, you just get to see how he survived and endured multiple kinds of pain, physical and most importantly mental pain, and how he got through that with basically finding things to have meaning in life, right? A will to meaning. I actually have a lot of notes here I took too on like a Google document, so I'll be looking down here, put some notes throughout the book here I'll be sharing, but there's just so much takeaways, I probably won't get to it all. But basically that is the gist of what happened in the part 1. It's just all these little things that he tried to find meaning for, right? With the people he was associated with, right? He saw other prisoners that figured, oh, I might as well give up. There's no meaning for me anymore. And one of the things I actually have here is that what he did to actually kind of get rid of these negative thoughts coming into his mind, negative experiences. One of the things they did as prisoners, they had to walk across the snow, and whether they were doing some kind of duty the guards had them do, traveling to one camp to another, one site to another, carrying things, actually bodies of other people. It was pretty sad. It was pretty cool to actually learn about this and actually enhance my perspective, because I was not aware of all the things that go on, especially in another person's lens. But as he's going through these walks, right? These treacherous walks in cold, like negative degrees weather, it's so cold, freezing, and they're barely wearing any clothing, with his other prisoners, right? Leading by one guard who's like physically beating on them. How did he endure this? And this is interesting, right? He is enduring this by seeing himself in the future. This is a great takeaway from one of the ways that he survived throughout the prison. He was there for 3 years at different sites, different campsites, 3 years until he finally got freed, was saved. But one of the ways was that he envisioned and had these talks with his wife. So while he was enduring these pains, these mental conflicts, these physical pains, he was seeing himself talking to his wife, and he was having these questions being answered back to him. Like he was having dialogue with his own wife, and he was kind of eliminating everything else around him. So it was like a sense that he forgot all the hardships that was going on, but he was genuinely just focusing on his conversations with his wife and what he actually helped other prisoners with, which he actually has He had some buddies that he was close with, that got out of the camps and actually were saved because of basically logotherapy, what he was teaching to them. He was telling them, if you can envision yourself in this moment, if you can see yourself in the future, right? Even though we cannot see a future for ourselves right now, even though the worst is happening to us, right? We're very, very low percentage of actually surviving. If you can see yourself in the future, right? And he saw himself saying this to a bunch of prisoners while he was, he saw himself being freed and getting out of camp and saying this to a bunch of people. But he said to them, if you can see yourself actually having an end goal and seeing you talking to your kids, talking to your cousins, your wife, a loved one, then that will help you, give you meaning to keep going in life. Because a lot of the prisoners just wanted to give up, right? They wanted to just stop right there and not go any further. They had no more meaning. So he found there to be multiple meanings in life. And I'll get into a little later further about the 3 meanings that he kind of dived deeper into. But that was kind of one of the cool things I noticed, is that he used his wife as an example to keep him pushing. That was just one thing. I mean, there were so many little things that he used as takeaways. I would say this is actually the gist of the whole thing, is that, and I wrote it down here in my notes, I said, it does not matter what we expect from life, but what life expects from us. So that's one thing that Viktor actually talked about, and it's kind of his, I would say, his personnel for life, right? His what he follows for his own lifestyle. That's like what he actually follows and lives by, is that when it does not matter what we expect from life, but what life expects from us. So if you think about in that context, you're always thinking about, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do. But when you actually know your why in this world, then every how that actually comes along is easier to accomplish. So it's different. Logotherapy, what he teaches, is different from other types of therapy, because you might look for something in life, you might look for meaning in life, but that might be a pleasure, right? So if you are looking for gratification, quick gratification in life, that's going to subside, right? That's going to be gone. Who knows how long that'll last? That might subside soon. But what he is saying is that when we find a different kind of meaning for little things in life, and we actually understand why we like them, we understand why this has true meaning in our life, it actually gives us a sense of purpose and fulfillment and keeps us going. So there are so many little things that just, it's so deep and so harder to articulate out, I guess, because I mean, I was rereading and I'm like, wow, like I have so much down here that this video might be like jumping around everywhere. But that's kind of the gist, is that like logotherapy, what he's teaching is you're finding meaning in everything, right? Even through suffering. And this is what I'll get into. I might as well jump into the 3 things he kind of talked about. So like I said, there was 2 parts. The first part is his journey in prison. You know, he flees. I did write a note in here, I know somewhere. I do kind of want to flip to it and share some of the dialogue that's actually happening in this book. So yeah, here we go. I wrote a note here, and I'll just read this section because I pointed an arrow to this, and I'll read what it says. So it says, we can answer these questions from experience as well as on principle. The experiences of camp life show that man does have a choice of action. There were enough examples, often of a heroic nature, which prove that apathy could be overcome, irritability suppressed. Man can preserve a vestige of spiritual freedom, of independence of mind, even in such terrible conditions of psychic and physical stress. So what I actually wrote, which now this is going back to what I was thinking about, I said, even in times of complete physical and mental stress, when our surroundings are really hard, we still have a choice of how we react to them. This is all our freedom we have. This is the main freedom we have, right? If you think about it, this is our freedom. And that was a great takeaway for me, is that anything that happens in your life, right? Whether it's a person coming up to you and throwing some kind of negativity towards your way, something that happens to you, an event throughout the day, we might not have control over that, right? We really don't have control over some of the things that externally happen to us. But what Viktor is saying is internally, we do have how we react to that, right? We can control that. That's what we control, is the way we react to that situation that happens on the external. So that's huge. That is very, very huge. And this is definitely what I want to get into, is the 3 meanings of life, right? So the second part of the book, after the first part of his journey through being in multiple camps as a prisoner, the second part kind of dives into, there's like a bunch of different, like he has one called The Will to Meaning, Existential Frustration. I think the second part was kind of more of his whole theory of logotherapy as a whole, and just diving deeper into it. Was really, really in depth. Like the second part was so in detail, but one of the main things was the 3 things of meaning of how to actually have meaning of a life, right? So the one being the essence of existence. So this quote here says, "Live as if you were living already for the second time, and as if you had acted the first time as wrongly as you were about to act now." So that's the first takeaway of finding meaning of life, a will for a meaning of life. So what that actually is saying, the essence of existence, is saying you're looking at every situation for obviously an opportunity to grow. So it's saying here that you're living as if you're living your second life, right? And you know you're about to make a mistake. So you're kind of looking at every situation as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to become better, as an opportunity to give. And I'm actually pretty sure it even says that within here. It talks about, you kind of look, I even arrowed down this one, and says powerful. So this is the same one, the first note. It says, "By declaring that man is responsible and must actualize the potential meaning of his life, I wish to stress that the true meaning of life is to be discovered in the world rather than within man or his own psyche, as though it were a closed system. I have termed this constitutive characteristic the self-transcendent." Whoa, you don't even know how many times I stopped and stumbled across these words. The self-transcendence.
Today, Junior?
I'm gonna skip it. Of human existence. It denotes the fact that being human always points and is directed to something or someone other than oneself. Be it a meaning to fulfill or another human being to encounter, the more one forgets himself by giving himself to a cause to serve or another person to love, the more human he is, and the more he actualizes himself. So what he is saying in the essence of existence is that you can find meaning in life when you're actually giving yourself outside of yourself to some other, whether that's a human, whether that's something else in your life. You find that meaning through that, right? That's self-actualizing. That's what he says. It's self-actualizing. Transcendence. I can't even say it right now. It's basically it is self-transcendence. Self-transcendence. Oh my. Okay. We gonna skip it. The second one was the meaning of love. So findings, that's kind of like, I guess you could say it's following along. The essence of existence is the meaning of love. Is finding someone that you can kind of have holding dear, like exactly like Viktor was doing. He had his wife in mind. He had his wife in mind when he was going through those times, and he had that love, and that helped him strive. That helped him keep that will of meaning to keep going. The last one is, third way, is finding a meaning in life is by the meaning of suffering. So this one is actually kind of interesting, and I'll read a little bit of it. But it said, the first paragraph says, "We must never forget that we may also find meaning in life even when confronted with a hopeless situation. When facing a fate that cannot be changed, for what then matters is to bear witness to the uniquely human potential at its best, which is to transform a personal tragedy into a triumph, to turn one's predicament into a human achievement. When we are no longer able to change a situation, just think of an incurable disease such as inoperable cancer, we are challenged to change ourselves." So this was interesting, and I also thought that, because I know he mentioned it, is that there is a meaning of suffering, right? We can always know, if we look at it in the lens that we can grow, right? The meaning has there is meaning in suffering, even when you're going through something that's terribly horrible. You can always look at it in a different lens, is what he's trying to say. You can find meaning within that. And one of the things he actually touched on was that even though, and he might even mention at the end of this, which it kind of actually blew my mind, or it might have been in the first part. He was mentioning a certain prisoner that actually survived and made it through the camp with him. So they made it out. They were actually living a life. They're living, I guess, more of a normal life. And they got home, and one of the prisoners that he was close with was walking across a crop garden, right, on someone else's garden. And the guy was like, "What are you doing? Why are you walking across my garden? You're messing up my stuff." And then the prisoner was like, he looked at that as an insult. He's like, "Really? I just got out of a camp for 3 to 4 years, and you want to insult me on this?" So what Viktor was trying to put there was that even though you might endure the most awful suffering, there will still be some other suffering that occurs. And as long as you look at it like that way, like that guy who was walking on the crop garden, and he was looking at what the guy was saying to him as an insult, and then he used his past experience, his past suffering, as a way to suffer even more. Rather, what he is saying now, Viktor, is like, you can have that suffering as a way of an accomplishment. You can look at that suffering and then have that push you, and have that push you later in life. He talks about being a lot older, when you're older ages, that you might not have a future to look for, but you have a past accomplishments, achievements to hold on to. That was a lot, though, to take in, a lot to share right there. Let's see if I have anything else here. I did write here that the cornerstone of Frankl's personal life and identity, I'm pretty sure I shared this, it is we ourselves who must answer the questions that life asks of us. And to these questions, we can respond only by being responsible for our existence. And that's kind of a main meaning for going on in life, right? Is that it's our responsibility to find out, to keep going, to find meaning in everything in life, right? To follow whatever spirituality it is that you're going after, right? That's the essence of it. I really think that's what he was trying to get at, right? Instead of asking, what is it? What's the meaning of my life? What's the meaning of my life? It's the life asking us, what's the meaning of we're being asked to ask of us. And he did write at the end, his approach to the reader is not to tell you what to do, but rather what they must do. And I think that was actually really, really powerful as well. I really liked what he said at the end here. He was a professor as well, so he was then further a professor out of the camp. And what he had his students do, he said, Frankl was once asked to express in one sentence the meaning of his own life. He wrote the response on paper and asked his students to guess what he had written. After some moments of quiet reflection, a student surprised Frankl by saying, "The meaning of your life is to help others find the meaning of theirs." That was exactly it, Frankl said. "Those are the very words I've written." I thought that was pretty cool. They ended with that one. But I'm gonna see if I wrote anything else specifically. Okay, this was cool. I wrote a little sticky note here and said, Viktor finding meanings to live during camp. So this was kind of a gist. I might have shared this. Let's see, it says, I'll just read from the top here. As a prisoner, he was suddenly forced to assess whether his own life still had any meaning. His survival was a combined result of his will to live, his instinct for self-preservation, some generous acts of human decency, and shrewdness. Of course, it also depended on blind luck, such as where he happened to be in prison, the whims of the guards, and arbitrary decisions about where to line up and who to trust or believe. However, something more was needed to overcome the deprivations and degradations of the camps. Frankl drew constantly upon uniquely human capacities such as inborn optimism, humor, psychological detachment, brief moments of solitude, inner freedom, and a steely resolve not to give up or commit suicide. He realized that he must try to live for the future, and he drew strength from loving thoughts of his wife and his deep desire to finish his book on logotherapy. So that is another thing too. He had a desire to finish his book, and he had a desire to share his ideas with everyone. He saw that, right? That's one of the things he saw. He saw himself sharing this with everyone, sharing him getting free, surviving. That helped him continue his survival as well, find meaning. He also found meaning in glimpses of beauty in nature and art. I love that. So he's finding meaning in everything. Most important, he realized that no matter what had happened, he retained the freedom to choose how to respond to his suffering. He saw this not merely as an option, but as his and every person's responsibility to choose the way in which he bears his burden. And I think that pretty much sums up the whole book right there. That sums up everything he went through camp, how he survived. Finding meaning in everything in life. So that's what it has done to me. And I even wrote here, I know I wrote, that's like what my main takeaway was that if I genuinely every single day, even through some kind of suffering, even through little tiny anxiety, fear that we go through, you can find a meaning to keep going. You can find this meaning in the present moment as well. And I love how Viktor says, it's a decision, right? It's a choice. So something could happen to me. I have no control over that external, right? I can't get upset about that, but what I can get upset of or be happy of is the way I react to that situation. That was my personal big takeaway, and I was inspired by Viktor going through the camp. I mean, reading about that, about what he endured and what he shared and what he continued to share while he was out of the camp, right? He even continued to see himself sharing this with other people. That was inspiring. I was like, wow, like here's something right here that's just a perspective change. So if you guys do want to read this, I will link this in the description below, so you can buy it. It'll probably be like an affiliate link, so it'll probably be through Amazon or something. So if you want to buy that, definitely I recommend it. It's a short read, it's not long, but I'm definitely going to reread it another time, especially just revisit different points, because there were some parts that I was reading through and I might have just missed something that was so important and could have altered personally my life even more, so there's just so many little takeaways. But thank you guys all for watching. I appreciate it. I'll try to do more book reviews in the future, just more stuff on personal development. I appreciate you all. Stay happy out there, stay healthy, stay cold. Peace, y'all. Love you.